Some developers will let people flip the unit before delivery.
Right.
Pre-construction is a huge part of the market now and will continue to be going forward. And hopefully we can weed out these bad developers. One of them's in the Tezal area, and I'm pretty sure this project will not be built out.
There's a different state of the real estate market, you know? Just based on renders, you can't just make a decision, you know? I mean, it's a small town. Working with another realtor again, after having a bad experience, like you probably will at some point. You know who I'm talking about. Hello, everyone. We're back here. Well, we're in a more comfortable setting now. I'm here with Fletcher Wheaton, and we're going to be discussing some real estate related topics. Fletcher, how are you?
What's up, Pedro? Happy to be back.
You can ask how I'm doing.
How are you doing?
Doesn't feel genuine. So we had an event last weekend by the same people who did the Cabo Real Estate Summit. I think it went pretty well. We discussed the dangers of pre-construction. Why do you think it's such an important topic that it is enough to have a conference about it? Why do you think it's so relevant right now?
Pre-construction in the United States can be dicey. You know, delays, bad construction. You look at like these large home builders, you have issues. So like the population in Cabo in 1980 was 10,000 people. The last census of 2020, it's 351,000. So you just have this like astronomical growth. Infrastructure is a huge thing, but also housing. So we have to keep building to keep up with demand. With that, and with Cabo being a hot market, we have a lot of developers coming in. From that conference, you know, I've always known it's like, hey, you got to vet the developer. That's not the easiest thing to do, you know, because you're going off their last projects. Maybe that was in Tulum, whatever it is. And when we got everybody together, we realized that a lot of agents are having the same issues. And it really comes down to who the developer is and, you know, what have they done in the past and will they do the right thing when the inevitable issues come up. But it's a huge, I'll get into the numbers here, but it's a huge part of our market.
Yeah, and sometimes like, an experienced developer isn't always the correct experience. You know, you hear about developers that, oh, they've built airports and hospitals all over the US. And you're like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how everything works here and that their projects are going to be delivered the way that they want them to be, you know?
We have a developer that's come to town and they have over 20 projects all throughout Mexico. And this is their first project in Baja, and everything is going well in that. But let's just say it didn't. None of those people that bought in that project care about the success of any of their previous 22 projects, right? So it doesn't necessarily translate into success here.
So what numbers do you have for us?
Pre-construction is a huge part of the market. Of the almost 2,000 listings that are houses and condos, 59% of that is built out and 41% of that is pre-construction. When you get into homes, we have 777 homes listed on the MLS. 75% of those are built out, 25% is pre-construction. And when you get on to condos, it's almost 1,150. 52% of the condos on the market in the MLS right now are pre-construction. On top of that, Pedro, we have there's a project in the Tezal area, and they have 15 listings on the MLS, but it's 104 condos. So literally 86% of their inventory is not listed on the MLS. So it's very safe to say conservatively that half of the market in Baja is pre-construction. So if you're an agent or if you're a buyer and you're say like pre-construction's out, you're limiting yourself to half the options. And I would completely understand if that was your train of thought.
When you start talking to a client and they're telling you what they're looking for, so you start like filtering, right? You start like, I'm looking for this location, number of bedrooms, amenities. So you start like removing everything that doesn't fit that description. You and I have this final filter of the research that we've done and what we know about developers. So we filter out which ones we know are too risky. You know, we don't think that they're going to be finished. We don't think the developer has a good track record. So we talked in the last video about what the state of the real estate market on paper, you know, on the MLS, these are the listings we have. But after knowing that not everything is going to be delivered as promised or not delivered. There's a different state of the real estate market, you know? Just based on renders, you can't just make a decision, you know?
No, and I mean, that's the huge difference between, like, let's say you're moving from, or let's say San Diego to Austin, Texas. It's not that different. Like, you can go kind of there and do it. When you come down to Cabo, especially when you have so much pre-construction, it's really important to know what you're getting into, what are the good projects. A lot of people are incentivized to sell a certain product, you know, so that's another thing. But it's very important to have somebody that knows the lay of the land. By the way, in the last video, we mentioned that sales are down 35%. So if you take that into consideration and you're a buyer, you have to understand that there's a lot of agents that need to make a commission right now. And that leads them psychologically needing that commission to probably be more aggressive in pushing you into something to make a sale, even if it's not necessarily the right product.
Yeah, more careless. And also, I mean, pre-construction has its pros and cons. Obviously, it's as they said in the conference, it's high risk, high reward. But for a realtor, it also has its pros and cons. You know, gonna be honest here, sometimes it means a quicker commission, but then it means like a long headache of...
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, you need to be behind them, and then it puts your reputation at stake also.
I've gotten a lot of clients because somebody will sell a pre-construction and they just, as soon as they make the transaction, it's done with.
Yeah.
They're not following up, and they expect a developer. Not all developers are sending, you know, consistent updates.
Yeah.
Something that's really interesting right now too is, since, let's call the boom after the pandemic, you just had rising prices, right? So you could come in and sell out, you know, start the lowest level, the highest risk, and then just increase prices until it's built out. Now we're starting to see projects, and let's say they're half complete, right? I'm thinking of one in Tezal, right by Costco, and half complete, but you have your first deliveries. The first 2 towers are delivered, okay? And then the developer has their inventory being built out. Let's say their inventory is, let's call it $550,000. That same unit, literally, maybe a slightly separate view, you're gonna get a furnished one for $450 or under from a resale. So the first time you're starting to see developer inventory compete against resales, and it can't keep up. So we have this interesting dynamic where, is the developer gonna lower the pricing, or should you just stick to resales? And for me, it really depends. You know, a lot of developers offer financing and things like that. A lot of them are still well priced, and the projects are selling well. So not all projects are created equal, but that's a big piece of the puzzle right now.
Do you think down the line it's going to become more common to have this like competition between resales and developers?
So look, that hasn't been, you know, because the values were going up. So the resale was the same value as the you know, developer inventory, right? And we're talking about when you get like title and you move in, right? And then you're reselling, not flipping a contract. So I think that will be the case for, you know, it comes back to supply and demand. When that equilibrium gets back to a more equal market and not a buyer's market, I think until that moment, you're gonna have developer inventory for the most part priced higher than resales, because the people that bought in the beginning can take, you know, if they're saying, hey, I'll get a 20% gain after I pay capital gains and everything, they're like, hey, I can walk away from this and made something, I can look at the next one. Another thing that's really important right now too is the US dollar to the peso. So we've seen that stabilize a little bit and get better for people that are paying dollars for pre-construction here, right? But at the end of the day, so let's just say it was at 20 to 1 and it went down to 17 to 1, okay? Now, when they started the project, it was at 20 to 1, and it was at 20 to 1 for a while. So let's say you bought a condo that was $400,000, okay? And then the peso drops to 17 to 1. When you factor in inflation at the same time, that's like basically saying, instead of giving that developer $400,000, you now giving him $300,000. So it put a strain on these developers, and a lot of them were already kind of reaching as it was. So it'll be very interesting. I have 2 projects in mind. One of them's in the Tezal area, and I'm pretty sure this project will not be built out. Like I'm talking, they won't even get like maybe to the second level, and it's just gonna stay like that. I don't think that's gonna be common, but I think that's definitely a lot more of a risk than when it was just like, hey, people were like, you know, they're ready to buy pre-construction. I will say this though too, and people know this that reach out to me. I'm very open about projects that I would not buy into. You know, like I mean, when somebody reaches out, I'm very, you know, it's like, hey, and it's not like, hey, this is my listing, so don't buy here. And people can see it right away when you do that. But no agent wants to sell something that is a fractured development or a busted. Like it's just not worth it.
Have you ever had a client that's like hell bent on something they saw online, you know, like renders, and they're like, I love this. You know, I think this is, you have to let them down. You're like,
no,
it might not be.
I was on a tour, and it was a couple. And so I think it was like 3 projects that we were touring. And she had mentioned she wanted to see a project. We're leaving one, and she's like, well, what about this place? And I said, look, I'm not going to take you there. She goes, well, how do you know I won't like it? Trust me, I've done one tour there, and like we couldn't even finish it. Like I'm telling you right now. And she's like, well, what if I want to see it? I said, look, if you wanted to go, I'll take you there. And if you like it, I will not I will literally not get the commission. I will have another agent write that, and you can do that. And I said, do you still want to see it? And she goes, no. I said, good. You just saved us both 45 minutes. Like we're good. I think it is good to be transparent, and who knows, maybe that one would have fit, but like, I don't want to take the risk, put them at jeopardy and then put me at jeopardy.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're like, even if they insisted, you're going to feel blame of maybe I should have insisted more. So yeah, I think that's becoming more common with especially with pre-construction.
To give a little recap here too, pre-construction is essentially half the market here in Baja. You know, you need to be careful. You can make some very painful mistakes. Now, some of these, you know, might be a 3 to 6 month delay on delivery. That's fine as long as they're doing the right thing, especially if you're buying in a level and it's gone up. You know, I've had that where like people, it's a 3 to 6 month wait. And I'm like, hey, kind of getting paid to wait right here. You know, we're up this much.
That's why you have to check the contract, the grace period, what happens after the grace period.
Well, we've seen this too. Jonathan, the attorney who presented there, there's a particular development in the San Jose corridor, and everybody hammered the developer. And he basically admitted that since everybody got something that was due to them, they might not get the common area completed because they all got something from them. So it's a tricky thing. Once again, it comes down to the developer, you know, and we learned in that conference, like, hey, are they using bank financing? Are they going off sales velocity? Legally,
how much is sold? Yeah.
Legally, they don't have to disclose that. You know, but that's a huge thing to know what the sales velocity is and see what has been pending, what has been closed. That's another thing I want to reiterate. Right now is a great time to become a buyer. And I can think of probably 4 projects in the Tezal area. This guy reached out about selling his unit, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, because I already own in this development, you know, and I'm like, man, maybe get another one here, because I can just tell in these good units, it's a buyer's market. So you can pick and choose, you know, what is it, 2, 3 bedroom? Do you want rental income? What is it? You want a place with amenities, ocean view. It is a really good time to get in. And I can think of like really 3, probably 4 projects that I like that it's a good time to get in, but it's for sure a buyer's market.
What other numbers do you?
Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. Just know that, you know, half the market is pre-construction. When you start getting into like San Lucas and the Tezal area, like that's definitely the case. You've got to realize that pre-construction is a great option. People say pre-construction, they think like ground up. I'm talking like you can get into these communities where you can see the sales velocity, you know the developer, you can tour like a unit. People are starting to live in these communities. So I'm not talking about you're buying like ground up dirt and renders. We're talking about projects that are starting to get deliveries. Maybe 10% of the inventory is still available. So it's not like there's the risk of sales stopping and then they can't finish the community. Like these communities are going to get finished, and some people that bought 2 years ago are like, hey, it's time to get out for whatever reason. So I think those are good plays.
Another good thing that we saw in the conference is about how the MLS is going to become more strict about what they start listing. I think that, and the fact that the problem of pre-construction with projects that maybe never get built out, it's not too far, you know? I think they're going to be more strict about construction permits, building permits.
Here's something that's interesting. Okay, so the MLS has said that they're going to start, and they've done this before, like blackballed people that were doing bad projects, right? Yeah. And one thing that I noticed at this conference is that if an agent sells in a community or in a pre-construction project, instead of letting the rest of the community know, there's this shame, there's this guilt, there's this like stigma associated. They won't want to have any affiliation with this. So they just go closed. Mm-hmm. So let's just say 10 agents sell in a project that's not, it's not getting complete and it doesn't look good. Instead of coming forward and saying there's issues with this and letting the rest of the market know, they go into hiding because they don't want to even be associated with this project. So that's what we're saying. We're trying to get a community together where agents can really come together and do the right thing and not let anybody else feel that pain. Yeah. And then maybe they can go to that developer and say, hey, does this need to change hands to somebody else? Because that's one of the resolutions that Jonathan has for one of the projects. It was a housing project in Tezal. It's like they can sell that land and give it to another developer that can complete the project and everything is fine.
I mean, it's a small town. Word gets around fast. And the odds of working with another realtor again after having a bad experience, like you probably will at some point. You know who I'm talking about.
Another interesting thing, and we'll end it after this. Another interesting thing was some developers will let people flip the unit before delivery. Right. And now that's a lot more common. Let's just say these people come from Tulum and where they don't have the MLS, and like that's more common. Here, not so much. They're going to be putting into, and we'll see what happens, but they're discussing putting in, some regulations on that where, the developer, the first buyer,
they'll have to be on board.
They'll have to be on board, and there's like closing costs, capital gains, and closing costs paid, just so it's more transparent than a lot of these, flipping it to the next person. So we have a bunch of property in Cabo, and I have not bought anything that's been built out. And part of the reason was, and we started buying in 2016. Yeah. So it was a different play, and it was just like, we're like, wow, that was kind of easy. Should we do another one? It's a different market right now, but pre-construction's a great way. It's always going to be a huge part of Baja, because if you have to go up all the way to Loreto, you're talking over 90% land still, right? Yeah. Even if you go, we were in Magrino yesterday, it's just all land. So there's gonna be development, right? It just has to be right. You got to make sure it's the right project. So pre-construction is a huge part of the market now, and will continue to be going forward. And hopefully we can weed out these bad developers. And there are bad agents. Most agents, I think, that make mistakes, I'd say maybe 10% of them are like shady, that they'll just do it for a commission. Some of them might be desperate and they need a commission, so they'll sell something. But at the end of the day, a lot of the agents that were at that conference, they were going by the word of the developer, and the developer just didn't deliver. So
and they're there because they care.
Exactly.
Because they think it's something that they need to know to be a good agent for a client.
So if you're interested in pre-construction, right now is a great time to buy. And I can think of at least 2 projects that I would not buy into, and I can think of about 3 that I would buy into. So
all right.
We'll leave it with that.
Thank you for joining us on this conversation about pre-construction and the state of the real estate market. Fletcher, where can they find you?
Yeah, just I would say Pedro at CaboRealEstate.com or Fletcher at Remexico.com are our emails. So reach out and we can help you out.